Good evening and welcome. Tonight, again, 17 family members, 4 others kidnapped in separate attacks in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State. Federal government replies critics, insists President Muhammadu Buhari prevented Nigeria from becoming a failed state. Godwin Obaseki of the PDP and Osage Ize Iyamu of the APC square up in a debate ahead of next week's governorship election. And angry opposition protesters again marched the streets of Belarus's capital, Minsk, in the latest protest against President Alexander Lukashenko, plus sports stories. We begin with security in Kaduna State, where 21 persons, including 17 family members, have been abducted in Chikun local government area of the state in 2 separate attacks over the weekend. Eyewitnesses say the gunmen stormed the area and started shooting sporadically, leaving several persons injured. 4 people were reportedly kidnapped on Friday, while 17 others were abducted on Saturday on their way to the farm at about 7 in the morning. 4 other relatives of the family members who were abducted on Saturday were rushed to a hospital in Kaduna following injuries sustained in the attack. The bandits were said to have escaped into the bushes, while security operatives are yet to confirm these attacks. Staying in Kaduna State, 3 persons were also confirmed killed in Kudan local government area of the state, this time by heavy flooding which swept several houses. The flooding, which occurred after long hours of heavy downpour on Thursday and Friday, forced many residents out of their homes. The state emergency management officials blame the incident on building of structures along water channels and riverbanks. The Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, had predicted flooding occasioned by heavy rainfall in many states across the country, including Kaduna. Just about 2 weeks ago, no fewer than 700 houses were submerged after hours of heavy downpour in the state capital and other surrounding communities. On Saturday, a similar incident occurred in Kudan local government, this time claiming 3 lives and the destruction of many houses. Although most of affected structures were built with mud, their erection along water channels and on top of drainages largely contributed to their collapse. The residents appear stranded with nowhere to go.
Around 10 p.m. on Saturday, I carry my phone, go to put phone charge for the service there. I come back. Immediately I coming back, I see my room here is collapsed. The room is collapsed. So inside the room, there are 5 people inside. There's their mother, which is named Safia, and there are 4 children. So I lose one of the children. The name of the first one, Abdurrahman.
Officials of the Kaduna State Emergency Management Agency, led by the Executive Secretary, are taking stock of the situation in the affected communities. Though flooding like this one has become a yearly occurrence in Kaduna, state emergency officials, however, attribute most of the incidents to avoidable human error. They warn communities against building houses on water channels or flood-prone areas, including blocking of drainage to avoid similar calamity in the future.
Those that live around the riverine areas to understand, ask from the authorities what it is, what level of distance do they need to keep away from flood lanes. You understand? Once you are aware of this, then you know that you can keep yourself away from danger. But as you can also see, there are some man-human issues around here. Indiscriminate dumping of refuse on this place. You can see are some of those reasons why some of these flooding normally come around.
We have some full 30 communities out of 10 wards, which is Hunkui, Kudan, and Lukoro, to sample the whole communities. And then the assessment will continue to compile the comprehensive report and submit to Executive Secretary.
In spite of early warning signals by government agencies to residents living along riverbanks and water channels to vacate those places, Kaduna has always witnessed flood disaster at the peak of the rainy season. And looking at residents of Egba village in Lapai local government area of Niger State lamenting the hardship they have to go through after floodwaters took over their community overnight, forcing them to resort to the use of canoes to move around. Egba is one of 15 worst hit communities in Lapai local government area where several houses and farmlands have been submerged. This is coming barely 3 days after the Niger State government announced that over 100 communities have been affected by flood. Some residents of the area have been relocated to dry land, while others are asking the government to come to their rescue. And in Delta State, the government has vowed to intensify monitoring and supervision of building construction works going on in the state after a one-story building under construction in Okwe area of Asaba, Delta State collapsed, leaving one person dead and 4 others injured. The State Commissioner for Information, Charles Anyagu, and the Director of the State Emergency Management Agency were at the scene of the collapse to assess the level of destruction and to verify the state of health of the victims. He notes that the tragedy was majorly caused by the bad work done by unqualified building contractors and the use of substandard material for construction.
What this has also now reminded us is the need for our officials to continue to probe around both the suburbs, just as they do within the city center, so that should anybody begin to erect structures, we will be at liberty to ask questions as to whether he has fulfilled all the necessary legal requirements and then policy requirements. Because if that is done, we would have been able to save the life of our brothers and sisters, and indeed also save the resources that is wasted.
There appears to be a ray of hope for residents of Trinity community in Owerri North local government area of Imo State, as the state government officials have visited the site of a landslide that occurred in Akwakuma community for assessment and further intervention. The visit comes a few days after some residents in the area were trapped for a few days due to the level of damage caused by the erosion. Our correspondent, Our correspondent reports.
One after another, families transferred their belongings to a safer environment. Some had to create a makeshift route to make the move easier. Residents say the move became imperative as measures put in place to serve as a temporary wedge has also been washed away by every downpour.
The commissioner sympathized with us and gave us assurance that the governor will respond promptly to this situation. He said that the governor was touched and assured us that something positive will come out of the visit, that the governor has directed them to come and see us, give us assurance that a consultant will come and take care of the situation.
They are appealing to the government to help them.
It's a terrible situation. It's a terrible situation. I'm appealing to the government to come immediately to our rescue. The palliative is not the main issue here. Let work start.
Indeed, help is on the way as the state government delegation, led by the Commissioner for Environment, is here to assess the level of devastation and hopefully commence repair work.
As soon as his report is ready, we are going to start work immediately. Once the report gets to me, I will take it to the governor. And the governor will do something because he wants to start work immediately. We don't want people to die here. I have advised them to relocate. We're asking the federal government to come and help us. We have IDRs now from this area. I am told that about 3,000 people will relocate. So we want to do a good job, and people must not be here while we are doing that.
About 3,000 residents have already been advised to relocate for their own safety, while the government works to salvage the situation. Ejitope Kutai, Channels Television News.
The federal government is insisting it is courageously tackling challenges confronting the country and building solid infrastructure for socio-economic development as against recent criticism that Nigeria is a failed state. The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, explains in a statement today that the nation is unrelenting in battling insecurity and working hard to ensure greatest prosperity for the greatest number of people. He blames some of the challenges on those he describes as the ones who frittered away a great opportunity to put Nigeria on a sound socio-economic footing. According to the minister, Nigeria today faces a lot of challenges, but whatever situation the country has found itself in, things would have been much worse but for the deft management of resources, unprecedented fight against corruption, determined battle against insurgency and banditry, as well as the abiding courage of Mr. President in piloting the ship of the state. Speaking in the same vein, the presidential spokesperson, Mr. Garba Shehu, is alleging that former President Olusegun Obasanjo has fallen from the status of Nigeria's commander-in-chief to its divider-in-chief. His comment is in reaction to a comment attributed to the former president, where he reportedly accused the Buhari administration of mismanaging the country's socio-economic development. But Mr. Shehu said the former president has made several attempts to divide the nation, while President Buhari continues to promote unity and nation building. Here in Lagos, the state government has announced September 21st for the reopening of schools for the 2020-2021 academic session. It's coming 5 months after the schools were shut following the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. The State Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, in a statement explains that the state government is adopting a phased approach to school resumption. According to her, the present GSS 3 and SSS 2 students in public schools are to resume classes from Monday, September 21st, 2020, while private primary and secondary schools are permitted to resume same date, but in phases similar to the plans for public schools. Private schools are to resume in the morning, classes on alternate days during the week, and teaching through various distance learning methods. The nursery classes and creche in both public and private schools remain closed until further announcements are made. Meanwhile, the Lagos State government is also asking schools to ensure that all COVID-19 guidelines for school operations are met. Meanwhile, Kano State has directed the reopening of 6 technical colleges in the state to enable students in exit classes to participate in the forthcoming NAPTEP examinations. The State Commissioner for Education, Muhammad Said Kiru, says the state government also directed the immediate payment of the NAPTEP examination fees for all SS3 students in the technical schools. He explains that 15.6 million naira has been earmarked for students' feeding, as well as the sum of 860,000 naira for the upkeep of the respective colleges. The state government also provided personal protective equipment to all students to ensure strict adherence to COVID-19 protocols. Candidates of the 2 major political parties taking part in next week's governorship election in Edo State have been speaking on their plans for the people of Edo State if elected on September 19th. The APC candidates, Pastor Osage Ize-Iyamu, and that of the PDP and current governor of the state, Godwin Obaseki, slotted out tonight in a live debate organized by Channels Television. The 2 candidates presented their agenda to the electorates and took turns to ask each other questions bordering on their aspirations to govern the state. This is the second in the series of debates, as 5 candidates took part in a similar debate on Friday.
If the people of Edo State elect you...
Finally, after much campaigning across Edo State, the much-awaited debate is here. The 2 major contenders, Governor Godwin Obaseki of the People's Democratic Party and Pastor Osage Ize-Iyamu of the All Progressives Congress.
12th, Edo State stand as...
From the word go, candidates declare achievements and intentions. First is the area of the economy.
That government's role is being an enabler, creating an enabling environment for people to come and invest so that the economy can thrive. We had to make sure that we created a sense of order where people will not be harassed when they come in. We created a sense of purpose for the civil service so that civil servants now realize that they are supposed to provide service.
We believe that there's no way we can move forward. There's no way we are going to attract investment in the absence of security. So we are going to invest in security apart from increasing the funding to security agencies. We are going to arrange and retrain our own vigilante groups and have a community policing. That alone will attract between 5,000 to 10,000 jobs.
Security, education and health are the next topics in focus, and Pastor Isaiah Iyamo is the first to talk about his plans on keeping people safe.
The only thing I know that the governor has increased the vote significantly is security vote. I have no problem with increasing your security vote, but I would have wanted to see some corresponding increase in the level of effectiveness in security issues. Unfortunately, the pittance that the security agencies get is still what they get. In the past 4 years, I've not seen any investment in the security sector.
What we have done is to rethink security.
Governor Obasaki's idea is of a fresh security arrangement.
We try to create a hybrid where, working with the federal government, within the state, you can now create your own structures and layers of security that will support what the federal government is doing. That led us to creating an outfit called POWOV, the Public Works Volunteers. We have about 3,000 young men and women who were hired in their wards and have been trained and given uniforms to help keep public order and provide intelligence, local intelligence on what's going on in that area, and we use those feed that intelligence into the federal security network.
Kidnapping is a headache the nation faces, and Edo State is not left out. Both candidates speak glowingly of their intentions.
Most of the people who have been kidnapped on Bini Auchi Road, they will tell you it happened at a place called Urokusa. That is where most of the time people come out and kidnap them. If I were governor, I will mobilize the Nigerian army to flush out the forest, go inside the forest and apprehend those who are there.
We deployed the services of the state government of contractors to clear the sides, the bushes around the roads from which the kidnappers, come in to stop vehicles. So such actions by us show that we have been supporting the federal agencies and we will continue to do so.
Next is the plan for developing education, especially with the forced changes brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic.
So we need to resort to technology to be able to teach them, and that's what we are doing. It also means that we need to really invest in technology in our schools, primary, secondary, and of course, tertiary level. We also need to train our teachers.
The logic of Edo Best is using technology to teach the children, to give the teachers a technology aid, a tablet where their lesson notes are loaded, where enough data is put in, and they are trained on how to teach children. That platform has been so useful.
If there's one issue that has dominated the campaign for both candidates, it is their relationship with the former APC national chairman, Adams Oshiomhole. The candidates took time to explain their relationship with the former governor of the state.
I was one of those who helped Comrade Oshiomhole to become governor in Edo State. Having left Labour, he had no money and he didn't even live in Edo State.
We know how we raise money for Comrade Adams election. So I am surprised that in public like this, we can continue with a lie that was meant to dress you up for political acceptability.
After a very engaging 2 hours, both men hugged each other in the spirit of true sportsmanship. Hopefully, this spirit will be on display in the next few days as they go into the last lap of the campaigns.
We'll have more on the Edo State governorship election later. I will be joined by our data analyst, Babajide Ogusowo. In the meantime, the People's Democratic Party is claiming there are plots by persons allegedly recruited by the All Progressives Congress to use frivolous lawsuits to scuttle the September 19 governorship election in Edo State. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the National Publicity Secretary of the party, Mr. Kola Olobodion, says the aim of the APC is to use the political groups to drag in the judiciary, trigger constitutional crisis in Edo State, the Niger Delta region, and the nation at large, and blame it on the court.
The People's Democratic Party raises alarm over plots by certain interests recruited by the All Progressives Congress to use frivolous lawsuits to scuttle the September 19 Edo State governorship election, following the APC's realization that there is no way they can win with the people of Edo State. The PDP reveals that the said interests, who are masquerading through certain political groups, are seeking to blackmail the judiciary and stampede the courts to violate the clear provisions of the Electoral Act and illegally halt the Edo election. It is therefore clear that the aim of the APC is to use political groups to drag in the judiciary, trigger constitutional crisis in Edo State, the Niger Delta region, and the nation at large, and blame it on the courts. Our party holds the APC responsible for the burning of the head office of the INEC in Akure, Ondo State. Our party says that information available to us indicates that the heinous act was perpetrated by the agents of the APC as part of their ploys by APC leaders in the state to destroy INEC sensitive equipment so as to frustrate the conduct of credible, free, and fair governorship election in Ondo State.
Moving on to other stories, the adverse effect of broken marriage weighs heavily on the mind of the founder of Rose of Sharon Glorious Ministry International, Apostle Folorunsho Alakija, as she hosts the 5th University of Marriage Conference in Lagos, southwest Nigeria. She traces one of the causes to infidelity and asks couples to give more time and attention to building their relationship and firm foundation for their children.
The infidelity statistics of 2020 suggests that about 40% of unmarried relationships and 25% of marriages see at least one incident of infidelity globally. Following this, the American Psychological Association reports that infidelity in the United States accounts for 20 to 40% of divorces. In Nigeria, the issue of divorce, which was hardly mentioned before now, seems to be gaining ground. In 2016, the National Bureau of Statistics suggests that 0.2% of men and 0.3% of women have legally untied the knot, and 1% recognized as being separated. Many say this hardly captures the real picture, as it focuses on court marriages only and excludes traditional marriage, which is more common among Nigerians. Founder and servant leader of the Rose of Sharon Glorious Ministry International, Apostle Folorunsho Alakija, who has enjoyed 44 years of marital bliss, is worried about the effect of broken homes on the Nigerian economy and future.
Children that are products of the marriage become unhappy. Some begin to get involved in drugs. Some end up becoming armed robbers. Some end up becoming, some lose their minds. And they become useless to themselves and to society, only because they're a product, or they're products of broken homes.
Disloyalty and keeping extramarital affairs have been observed as major factors in the breakup of marriages. Preferring possible solutions is what the 2020 University of Marriage seeks to achieve. The Chief Executive Officer of Family Booster Ministry International, Pastor B.C. Adewale, suggests that the answer begins with the spouse being at a lot.
Is the man in the bedroom, whether negative or positive, will show something. Is the way he eats your food, what he says, when you are sleeping together, husband and wife, can show something.
Exhaustive.
For Mrs. Adeola Mensah, the Bible offers the path to read on faithfulness in marriages.
Affirm your husband. Let him know that he's the best thing that happened to you outside of Jesus Christ. Husband, you are told to love your wives.
I'll be asking Apostle Folorunsho Alakija this very question again.
While the tips were shared, questions from virtual participants were collated and then posed to the speakers. One of them from a woman who says she's been peeping into her husband's mobile phone.
if it's negative, you're going to have heartache. And that's precisely what has happened in this case. And it's now beginning to cause issues. Communication is important, by all means, but don't let it lead to a situation where it's going to cause pain.
The next outing for Rose of Sharon Glorious Ministry International would be its National Crusade, scheduled for October 22nd to 24th, 2020.
When the News at 10 returns, we'll continue with the politics in Edo State with a focus on the figures of eligible voters now and what obtained in 2016. Our data analyst, Babajide Ogusanwo, will be our guide. Join us again. You already know where we're headed. The Edo governorship debate they held tonight was not just an opportunity for candidates to speak, but for citizens to have more information to make a voting decision next week. To share insights about the debate and the election is data and information consultant Babajide Ogusanwo. I guess this will be our topic majorly for the rest of the week. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yes, and I think you didn't watch the debate. You were getting ready for tonight's news.
I watched a bit. I caught a bit of it, whether we're talking about state policing and just a few other issues, human trafficking and so on. So I did listen in on the conversation. It wasn't as heated, as we thought it would be, but they were not. You're the one who's going to analyze this tonight. So one candidate did talk about why he wants to be governor. The other gave reasons why he wants to be re-elected. What stood out for you tonight?
It was one candidate talking about his mega movement, Make Edo Great Again, and another candidate talking about a simple agenda. But for me, there are three ways I'd like to talk about this debate. The first is to talk about the similarities and differences of their ideologies. The second is to look at the similarities and differences in their manifesto, Amarachi. And finally, I'll share some history with you. Some history because there are 20 states that whenever their governorship candidate asks for a re-election, there are 20 states in Nigeria that the governorship candidate always wins. And I'll share some of that history with you.
So kick us off then.
Let's start with the ideologies. And tonight, we saw both candidates talk about their plans, their programs, and they did well on that. And we had a surplus of that. What we had a deficit of was how will they finance their plans and programs? Will they finance it through getting much money from the citizens, exactly how much? Or do they intend to raise domestic debt, take on foreign loans, or perhaps sell some government assets? We didn't get a lot of information about that. But in summary, here's what I think each candidate stands for. The candidate of the APC, which is Pastor Osage Izeyamu, seemed to lean more towards a bit of capitalism, but more of socialism, which is a government that will be, or an economy that will be led by the government. The candidate of the PDP, Governor Obaseki, seemed to sound more like a bit of a socialist, but more of a capitalist, which is an economy that will be run more by private investors and private sector. So in all, Osage Izeyamu seems to stand for a pro-government regulated economy, and Obaseki stands for a pro-private sector economy. I think that is the message that a lot of viewers will want to know as a summary of that. But let's take a look at their manifesto and look at those similarities and differences. And if you look at that, a lot of things, but there are some that are very important to Nigerians. Security. Both candidates believe in community policing. Governor Obaseki believes in the federal government playing an expanded role in security. Pastor Izeyamu, the candidate of the APC, believes in using technology to drive some of his security ideas. On health, Governor Obaseki, the candidate of the PDP, believes in private healthcare centers should drive a lot of his health policies. The candidate of the APC believes in cottage hospitals. And even in justice, we see the pastor saying more of support for women, children, and widows.
Yeah, he mentioned that.
And for investment, again, most likely an economy of Edo State under Governor Obaseki will be private sector driven. and an economy under Pastor Osagie Ezeamu will see the government playing an expanded role, especially in utilities. That's what the manifesto seems to really focus on. So we've seen some of those similarities and differences. But when we talk about history, because a lot of Nigerians have been asking, what is the probability or what is the outlook for next week? And I'll share a bit of history into our governorship elections in the Fourth Republic since 1999. Because there are 20 states that whenever the governorship candidate asks its citizens to re-elect them, there are 20 states that the governorship candidate has always won since 1999. From the northwest, we have Katsina, Kebbi, Sokoto, and Jigawa. From the north central, we have Benue, Plateau, and Niger State. In the northeast, Yobe and Taraba. In the southwest, it's only Lagos State that whenever the governorship candidate wants to be elected, he wins if he's on the ballot. From the southeast, we have Abia, Anambra, Enugu, and Ebonyi. And interestingly, the south-south, whenever the governorship candidate is on the ballot in the south-south, the governorship candidate always wins. In other words, there's no governorship candidate from the south-south since 1999 that has come on the ballot and lost his election. So this time, it's either history will continue or there'll be a change in history. That is the fact.
Okay, so elections are about tactics and strategies. What are you seeing for next week?
A lot of things. We could look at exactly what happened in 2016 and understand the strategies that both candidates used because they were the same two top contenders. And if you look at that, you will see what happened in Edo North. Edo North has 6 local governments. 30% of Edo's population is in Edo North. That is the same region that has the ex-governor Godwin Adams Oshomole and the current deputy governor. You see what is going on in Edo Central that has 5 local governments and 16 LGAs. And in Edo South, where a lot of things are expected to happen, is where you have more than half of the population, 7 local governments, and over 1,300 polling units. So in summary, a lot of attention will be first on what happens in Edo South and what happens in Edo North. History from what happened in 2016 showed that Godwin Obaseki won in Edo North, Pastor Osagie Ezeamu won in Edo Central, and then Godwin Obaseki won in Edo South. So next week's election will really, all senatorial districts are important, but we know Edo South has most of the polling units. And in terms of security, we'll expect that all security officials are also really interested in what goes on in Edo South.
Yeah.
But here's what I really think is
very
important.
Quickly then. Very quickly.
There's one major thing that has changed and not changed. What has not changed is we've seen less female participation in this election. In 2016, there was only 1 candidate out of 19 candidates, only 1 female candidate in 2016. 2020, we only have 3 out of 28 candidates. Right. Whoever becomes governor needs to understand that women play a very important role in politics, and we expect that there will be more women playing big roles when it comes to not just state politics, but national politics.
I think it's a reflection of what's going on in the country currently. Babajide, thanks again. We
Maybe
appreciate
one day
your
you'll
thoughts.
join politics too.
Well, that's still up for discussion. Thanks again for joining us tonight.
Pleasure is always mine.
Away from politics now, bearing last-minute changes, the leadership of Nigeria's Joint Health Workers Union has asked its members to withdraw their services and embark on a nationwide strike starting from midnight. This decision was reached after the union's expanded NEC held yesterday. The union says it gave the federal government 1 week to address all lingering issues and nothing concrete has been achieved. But the Minister of Labour and Productivity, Dr. Chris Ngige, had on September 10th threatened members of the union to shelve their plans for industrial action or face sanctions. The health workers are asking the federal government to address the failing and decaying infrastructure in the health sector, pay the shortfall in COVID-19 hazard allowance for their members, and also pay all outstanding salary arrears. The federal government, however, is asking the health workers not to go ahead with a planned strike action. A statement from the Ministry of Labour and Employment says going ahead with the action will be illegal, as it is in clear breach of the ILO principles and conventions on strike and Trades Disputes Act. The statement further asks JHISU not to arm twist or intimidate the federal government, despite showing clear commitment to tackling the challenges in the sector. The federal government explains that any strike at this time will be inimical to an equitable disputes, equitable settlement, of the disputes after spending about 20 billion naira from April to May 2020 and an additional 8.9 billion naira for June 2020 on COVID-19 hazard and inducement allowances, respectively, to all categories of health workers that are mainly Johisu members. 32 years after the World Health Organization established the goal of a polio-free world by 2000, Nigeria is the last country in Africa to be certified free of the wild polio virus. As was evident in 2016, when 2 new polio cases dashed the country's hopes of eradication in 2017, the status gained must be actively maintained. This report by Mary Alale Yusuf explores what must be done to maintain a polio-free status.
According to the World Health Organization, in 2012, more than half the world's indigenous wild polio virus cases were in Nigeria. Most in the northeast, which was hard to access due to conflict and rumors that the polio vaccine was being used as a contraceptive. Poliomyelitis is a deadly virus contracted fecal-orally. 1 in 200 infections results in irreversible paralysis, and 5 to 10% of those in death. Ms. Dora Alahira, who will soon be retiring from the civil service, was infected by the virus when she was 3.5 years old. She was from an enlightened family, so her parents had her treated and educated her up to the university level. She realizes that not everyone who was infected is as fortunate.
There are so many people or so many children that had poliomyelitis and never survived it. And some of them cannot even do anything for themselves now. So some of them have been thrown on the streets begging.
After several coordinated drives of routine and supplementary immunization, sponsored largely by international agencies, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization declared Nigeria polio-free in 2020. It is the last country in Africa to be rid of the virus. Ms. Alahira advises that polio vaccinations should continue.
We have not recorded any breakout in Nigeria for the past 3 years, but the government will continue. I hope so.
Dr. Alera Roberts thinks so too and speaks for the body of public health physicians when she says only a strong primary health care system can keep this hard-won victory.
We have to have them working right at the grassroots, constantly, daily, without interruption. That requires incentivization, that requires constant remuneration, that requires constant training and retraining to make sure that they remain at the grassroots and are happy to do so, working door to door, child by child.
So we ensure that every child that is born gets their full vaccination. And so they get it at birth, they get it at 6 weeks, they get it at 10 weeks, they get it at 14 weeks.
This, coupled with active surveillance of all border entries and supplementary immunization exercises where coverage falls short, are important.
The current plan by the federal government to eventually transit to injectable polio vaccines is expected to prevent not just wild polio infections, but vaccine-derived polio as well, which will, in turn, prevent paralysis, indigence, and loss of life. Mary Alale Yusuf, Channels Television News.
The Ebonyi State Governor Dave Umahi is calling on investors and the private sector to take advantage of the investment opportunities in the state by coming there to invest and grow their business. The governor made the call during a dinner meeting with some indigents of Ebonyi State residing in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, irrespective of their political parties. He adds that there is need to embrace development in the state with a massive infrastructure already put in place, which no doubt is boosting economic activities in Ebonyi.
The night view of Abakaliki, the Ebonyi state capital, and neighboring towns show how much attention is given to infrastructure development by successive administrations in the state. The present administration has lived up to this tradition making Ebonyi State a haven for citizens and visitors. On this premise, a meeting is convened. Governor Dave Umahi has invited notable indigents across political divides to explain his achievements so far and to discuss the need for all to unite for a common good.
We have over 150 kilometers of street lights, and all the roads, or most of the roads, were fully tarred, down the streets, and we tried to put street lights. I can't claim that the street light is 100% within the capital city, nor the road 100% done. But appreciably, we have done quite a lot to lift the image of the state. I think our exit is 2 years and 9 months. But whether you are APC or PDP or whatever party, I will bequeath to Ebonyi State an atmosphere where God and the people will freely choose their leaders.
Governor Umahi also used the opportunity to encourage investors, including indigents in diaspora, to come to the state, promising people-friendly policies.
If you come out with investment, we must assess your investment portfolio, and then we enter into MOU, and then give you ISPO. So if at any time any government changes the policy that will affect your investment, you start losing your money. You will collect back the investment from the Federation account.
Some of the guests expressed their satisfaction with the policies and programs of the Dave Umahi-led government in the last 5 years.
It has expanded economically, socially, and so there is no doubt that Ebonyi is no longer what it used to be.
And we believe that having promised Ebonyi and having laid a very solid foundation, is going to do more before the termination of his second term.
Evidently, there is no development without peace. Ebonyi State requires this, irrespective of political, religious and ethnic affiliation, to become a cynosure of development.
To the foreign scene now, France has reported nearly 11,000 coronavirus cases in one day as the country continues to struggle with a fresh surge of infections. The number of people admitted to hospital and intensive care are also increasing. As comes as global COVID-19 cases surpass 28.3 million. Here's a global update. The number of coronavirus cases around the world topped 28.3 million as of Saturday, with the death toll exceeding 911,000, according to the latest data from the World Health Organization. India, which overtook Brazil to have the second highest number of cases behind the United States, reported over 94,000 new cases on Sunday, taking the total cases past 4.7 million, as infection numbers rise in several states amid a gradual opening of business. The number of deaths rose to 78,586, with 1,114 new deaths, so says the Health Ministry. And in the United States, the number of COVID-19 cases surpassed 6.48 million on Saturday. The Johns Hopkins Center for Systems Science and Engineering shows the nationwide caseload amounted to 6,480,834, with the death toll reaching 193,650. The Washington Post says that since the outbreak of COVID-19, President Donald Trump has repeatedly assured Americans that the virus will soon disappear like magic. Over in Australia, protesters in Melbourne defied a coronavirus lockdown on Sunday, prompting 74 arrests and at least 176 infringement notices for breaching public health orders, as new infections in the Australian hotspots rose to 41. The numbers confirm a steady downward trend from a peak of more than 700 cases in a single day in early August. Victoria accounts for about 75% of Australia's more than 26,600 COVID-19 cases, and its capital, Melbourne, has been under strict lockdown for several weeks. Finally, a military medical scientist claims to have shown the world China's speed in the development of the COVID-19 vaccine as her vaccine entered the first phase clinical trials as early as on March 16, the first in the world, and has shown good clinical results so far. The adenovirus vector vaccine began phase 1 clinical trials on March 16 and began phase 2 clinical trials in April. In July, the data of the vaccine's phase 2 clinical trials were released to the world. Thousands of people have been marching through the Belarusian capital, Minsk, continuing protests in the past few weeks against President Alexander Lukashenko's government. The protests have been going on for weeks over a widely disputed presidential election, the returned President Lukashenko, who has been in power for 26 years. He's denied reports of widespread ballot rigging and instead accuses Western nations of interfering, promising to defend Belarus. Police say they arrested about 250 people ahead of today's demonstration, dubbed the March of Heroes. President Lukashenko said he may establish closer ties with Russia, his main ally. He's also been photographed near his residence carrying a gun and being surrounded by heavily armed security personnel. Lagos State has become the first state to organize a tournament since the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 approved the resumption of non-contact sports. The competition, which involves 160 athletes, was held at the Molade Okoya Thomas Indoor Sports Hall of the Teslim Balogun Stadium in Surulere, Lagos.
The Teslim Balogun Stadium in Surulere, Lagos gradually comes back to life after nearly 7 months closure owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. This time, it is an invitational tournament to mark the resumption of non-contact sports following the approval of the federal government. Sports is back, as the tournament is called, seeks to convey a new order under controlled crowd management and strict adherence to the health protocols. The sporting events featured are badminton, squash, table tennis, darts, Ayo, chess, Scrabble, and Monopoly. Technical and health officials ensure competitors follow the stipulated guidelines. But how are the participants adjusting to the new normal?
I've been maintaining all the things that they say we should be doing during this COVID period, and we are not relenting in our effort in all this distance and everything.
Well, in terms of relations, it's going to be a very gradual thing. Because professionally, I would not expect any coach to just start rushing into main action now. You have to build up gradually.
Organizers say hosting Nigeria's first non-contact sports tournament after the interruption is a commendable achievement.
The post-COVID era is not going to be business as before. So how do we get our staff to know what to do, what procedures to take, what protocols to observe? What should they do when athletes are hugging or trying to hug when they are playing games? What do we do? So we went through all those dry runs, we've practiced, and we know that it's only a live event that can make sure that can bring those things to perfection.
With the resumption of non-contact sports, athletes and fans are expecting more competitions to demonstrate the rebirth of sports.
Tennis now. Alexander Zverev looks set to clinch his first Grand Slam title as the German has taken a 6-2, 6-4 lead at the ongoing US Open men's final at Flushing Meadows. The fifth seed is now just a set from winning the second Grand Slam and what will be his first Grand Slam title. The high point of his career so far was winning the 2018 ATP Finals, where he beat Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer on his way to the end of season title. And the main news again, 17 family members and 4 other persons have been kidnapped in separate attacks on 2 communities in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State. Also today, the PDP's Godwin Obaseki and candidates of the All Progressives Congress, Osage Ize-Iyamu, today squared up in a debate as they presented their agenda ahead of next week's governorship election. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubeni. Good night.